Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bobble Pod. On this episode, we're going to be talking about creating high-performing LinkedIn content with our guest, Shoaib Ahmed. Am I saying that right? I want to make sure for our guest, Shoaib. So, a beautiful name, by the way. Very interesting to say. So, before, as always, anyone who knows who listens and anyone who's new, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe if you listen to any streaming audio platform. And if you're on YouTube, hello YouTube, don't forget to click on the subscribe button, click on the bell notification because our episodes come out every week. I mentioned in my last episode that this is a great episode following on from my previous episode last week, which I talked about maximizing your LinkedIn ad performance. And to now talk about creating high performing LinkedIn content, I kind of stressed on my last podcast that the creative messaging is very, very key, a key element of focus, whether you're doing ads or just general posting. So first of all, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
From Yello Hippo, I'm saying that correct, right? Just for our audience, briefly and quickly, just give us a roadmap of how you got to becoming your own director at Yello Hippo and what you do.
Yes. Okay. So I'm 24. Whilst at uni, I did a placement year in a marketing agency.
Yeah.
So I actually studied geography at uni, very different to what I do today. But yeah, did that placement year in London for a marketing agency. Absolutely loved it. Very much social media based. Then I started in a startup after uni, a personal branding agency. Did that for 6 months and then thought, okay, there's a big market here and I think I can do this quite well. So I'm going to give it a shot. Left that, started my agency January the 1st, 2022. Started freelancing for 3 months and then we converted into a limited company that April. And then, now we've got a LinkedIn first personal branding agency, team of 3, quite a small, tight-knit team. We've worked with over 50 clients in the last 18 months, I would say, and generated around 115 million views on LinkedIn for clients and 3 million in attributable revenue from the work that we do.
That is extremely impressive in just a short period of time.
Thank you.
And considering obviously you didn't even do any kind of degree in marketing. I always say like a degree really just shows people. A degree is mainly for employers, it's people like me, really, that kind of shows to me that a potential candidate will turn up, do a set of tasks and get them completed for what they're going to be paid for, essentially. Like you can do that element. So that's kind of the core skill you learn about being in university, I would say, is that you're able to do work on your own, take information, go out and get it done in a set amount of time and a set practice so that you can be basically employee worthy. Essentially employed by someone, essentially. So, but it doesn't really matter what you do because I always say in this industry, you can teach it and you can learn it. It's just how much time are you willing to give it. So, can you share the name where you did your placement?
Yes. So the placement I did for a company called R&P Enterprise, which helps young people actually find work experience. So I ironically was like their placement student helping other students find placement years and internships and that kind of thing. Wow. Really good philosophy because it was all about paid internships and it was really quality work experience. So that was amazing. Very small startup, which I think is such an advantage for a young person as well to learn quickly. Yeah. Then I worked for Kurogo, which is another personal branding agency. I was their first full-time employee. They've gone on to scale to a team of 20 or so now. So doing amazing things. And then I started freelancing myself.
And you just predominantly focus on LinkedIn as a platform, or do you do other channels as well?
Yeah, predominantly LinkedIn. We have kind of shifted a little bit since starting, purely because some of our clients who we've worked with for a long period of time on LinkedIn want us to look at their Instagram or TikTok. Because personal branding, it transcends any particular social media platform. So the kind of frameworks and foundations of a good personal brand are multi-channel. So we sometimes dabble in other areas, but we do say we're a LinkedIn first platform because of the unique algorithm and the organic reach potential on there specifically.
Right. So creating high performing LinkedIn content, what is the secret? Tell us.
Yes, good question. I mean, there's a lot to it. And we focus on personal profiles, so the profile of like the founder or the creator rather than the company alone, because the algorithm itself favors personal profiles. LinkedIn is becoming a creator platform. And that's clearly obvious from all the new features that they're developing, the creator programs that LinkedIn are developing. And now we're seeing also paid sponsorship on LinkedIn. So almost like LinkedIn influencing. So there's a lot of change happening right now, and the big opportunity for people to really tap into that organic reach. I describe it similar to TikTok, the organic reach potential. So you don't need a big following, first of all, to start and build a profile on LinkedIn. You can go viral with 100 followers, 100 connections. It's possible. I see it often, actually. You can pick up thousands of followers overnight. I've also seen that happen. We did it for a couple of our clients. The secret, I would say, is really understanding who you are, what you want to say, and who's listening. If you're able to nail those things and convey that really value-driven messaging, you're going to do a great job. Now, there's loads of things that come into that. I think personal branding is so effective because it's personal. And I know traditionally LinkedIn has been kind of this corporate, professional platform, quite dull, quite serious. For a specific demographic also, I would add, a lot of young people now are on LinkedIn, and they weren't, 5-10 years ago. So I think you've got to be personal. Part of that is being vulnerable, sharing your story, your journey. People relate to people, and we've had this whole debate a lot,
I say that people buy into people as much as they do your services.
Exactly. And we've seen it happen. There's a client that we took on, actually my first ever client, a pair of co-founders in Jan 2022. They, in 6 months, scaled their personal audiences to over 50,000 followers. And they went from 3 people, I think, when I started working with them. Now they have a team of 25. And they say a third of all their business revenue, considering they make 6 figures per month now, a third of that is directly from their LinkedIn profiles. So they get inbound DMs from people saying, we'd love to work with you, because they see the founders, what they're like, who they are, what type of people. They also see that they're creating content and are effective at building communities and building brands and doing marketing themselves. And therefore people want a slice of that. It's a great form of social proof. If you can build a good, effective personal brand on LinkedIn, it's, people see that and think, okay, this guy, regardless of anything else, they just think, I trust this person because they're doing something right.
Yeah, they see all the engagement, the comments and likes, and they're like, okay, he's doing something right to get that. Because then when you compare it to your own engagement, likes and comments, it's not as high. Thinking, all right, there's something he's clearly building. It's building a following. Yeah. And it's, I always say it's the KSI and Logan Paul model and Mr. Beast model. It's like, the reason they're successful is they took their following from what they were doing, went into different areas of whether it was podcast, boxing, food, or drinks. And it's their followers, their people, their brand, who they are, that buy from them and then create the hype for it, which is why it's successful, because they've now such a large following. Yeah. People are brand advocates of theirs. And essentially you want to do yourself within the professional environment, not just in your personal sense. And yes, you got to add in a level of personality. I still struggle with that level of bringing in personality, because you always think, everyone has different opinions. These days, opinions, vary on different topics about whether it's social or political, and I try to stay away from that as much as I can, because I'm like, it's got nothing to do with anyone else, how I think or feel. Ultimately, it's me, my life, my choice. But I never really share it either, because it's like, you're not going to influence how I vote. I'm going to vote based on my needs and stuff like that. This isn't a political talk or podcast, for the record, but I struggle as an individual, because obviously I tried to build this profile around Mr. Bobble and the Bobble Pod. And most of my ideas and strategies are how I want to do that. But what I always see when people are posting is, yes, they are quite personable. They share their own experiences. But I want to ask you about the algorithm, because what I see a lot of people doing is they do text-based posts on LinkedIn in the feed, and they'll do a little teaser, which is almost like, I call it, I don't want to say it's misleading, but
it's the hook.
It's the hook that comes in, and then you got to click on the read more, and then you see, and it's broken down in paragraphs. Does that actually work? Because some people tell me it's annoying. Some people don't like that, or feel like it's just there to generate engagement with the post or read more. What's your viewpoint on the algorithm and how people should post?
Yeah, I mean, the hook totally works. We've written, I think now, over 4,500 LinkedIn posts in the last 18 months as an agency. Yeah. And the data is very clearly shows particular trends. And I'm talking about the top performing pieces of content. I think about 97% of our top 500 posts have a hook that includes an I, a number, and sets up a story. And 97% of the top 500 posts is a lot. And considering we've generated 115 million views on content, that's a big chunk, that top 500. So immediately it personalizes your content. It immediately differentiates what you're saying from everything else on LinkedIn, because we've seen millions of posts on leadership, 1 million posts on how to do digital marketing, 1 million posts on XYZ. But as soon as you personalize it, you bring in opinion. And people love hearing opinion because it's different and it's subjective, and they can share commentary on that, A number, because it adds authority. So stats, even things like, 12 weeks ago, this happened. That in itself, that date contextualizes your post, makes it unique, also sets up a story, right? So if your first 2 lines, your hook, as you mentioned, can set up a story and grab that curiosity from people, they're going to click read more. They're going to then read the rest of the post. And we all know that if you write a post, you want it to be seen, right? It is a form. It is a little bit like a popularity contest. If you've got a hook, no one's going to read your content. Your reach is going to be low. That's not going to convert into business for you long term. So it is a game of playing the algorithm a little bit. But you can do that in ways that is actually interesting and thought provoking and genuinely captures people's attention, rather than going down the clickbaity route where you kind of be a bit deceitful, or you exaggerate and make kind of false claims to reel people in.
Yeah, because sometimes I feel that's what it is. For me, I always feel like it's hit and miss. There's posts that I don't expect to go viral, that I've had a few go viral. I think one was on my LinkedIn, and it got featured in the top right stories as the number one post about that specific topic. And it was, sorry Karen, no pizza for you. And it was New Zealand, Australia, I think, where there was a story about how Domino's were doing a competition about tell us why you're a good Karen and you get a free pizza. I was like, that's funny to me. But it got a lot of backlash. I'd say it got a lot of backlash. It was very, there was 2 sides of the fence with this. Is this good marketing, bad marketing? And I just posted, sorry for any of my current contacts on here, but this is hilarious. Because it wasn't UK based. And I was like, for a brand like Domino's to do something like that, that's quite funny. And I don't know, maybe 100,000 views in the post. And it got featured in that element. And all I did was share a BBC News story link.
Yeah.
That's what the image came up with, and added one line. It was like, I think this is hilarious. Sorry for any Karens that are my contacts. The communication engagement, to the point where actually, this is where I realized there was 2 people side of the fence. I turned comments off because there was a few trolls going on there abusing everybody and calling them racist. And I mean, you gotta look in the mirror, they're calling me racist. Because I had a comment on a news story about something that happened on the other side of the world, because I found it funny. But apparently that made me racist. And then I just was like, can't be dealing with the comment section. It was too much, turned it off. And then I kind of not changed my view posting. I'll still share my opinions and views. But I think that's quite interesting. So you're saying, use the word I, a date stamp, and then set the foundation of a story. Yeah. And
it's got to be an interesting story. You can turn anything into a story. So whether it's case study results, whether it's a client testimonial, that can be turned into a story. If you run an experiment testing 2 different email subject lines, that in itself, for a mass audience, is probably quite boring, unless you work in that niche and you will actually gain some value from it. But you can turn that into a really gripping story. And storytelling is like the foundation of a good personal brand, because that's what people follow. It's got to convey some form of emotion that compels people to act, whether that's to like a post, engage, DM you, check out your website, comment. Storytelling is the foundation. And there's another element I think which is really important just to mention for the algorithm is the type of framework that we use at Yello Hippo is starting with a universal theme. So universal theme, I'm talking like leadership, culture, entrepreneurship, all these big themes that a lot of people can relate to. Whether you're an intern at a company or a CEO, you can relate to something about leadership because you either are a leader, you've had a good experience with a leader, you've had a bad experience, right? So it's universal, it's not alienating anybody. Then inject a piece of personal storytelling into that content, into that theme. And that's how you get a post that appeals to a mass audience, but is unique and original to you and makes a particular comment. So that's the framework that we use. So all the viral posts that we've written, all of them follow that framework because you're writing not just for a small audience, but for everybody.
Can you have multiple themes, or do you just stick to one? So if someone, let's say, take me example, obviously, I don't really call myself an entrepreneur. I call myself a CEO. I call myself a leader, but I call myself a digital marketer. Well, people call me a digital marketing expert. I always get imposter syndrome. I get it sometimes. Everyone comes up to me, oh, you're Manny, you got a podcast and agency. I'm like, yeah. And I just go quiet and I just say thank you. And then that's it about it. But I understand the value of creating this content because I'm personalizing it. People, I get it, are buying into me. Bobble is my nickname. That's why it's called Bobble Digital. That's why it's called Bobble Pod. So I am creating a theme and element to that. So can you have multiple themes that you have, or do you just stick to one? Yeah,
no, it's good to have 3 to 5. I call them content pillars. That's what we call them. So when we do a strategy with a client, we define or articulate their 3 to 5 content pillars. So for example, if you work in, so we have a client who's a social media influencer, right? So one of their pillars will be video. Because they do a lot of video content. One will be social. One will be agency growth because they're currently building a team. One is culture because they want to scale that team and want to attract talent into their organization. And then one's entrepreneurship. So those 5 themes all relate to them as an individual, but they're also themes that are broad enough to diversify their content, hit different audiences, and to give them the best chance possible of growing their account.
Oh, wow. So should content be video-based, image, text-based? What works better?
Good question. Again, from the data that we've collected, a text-based post with an image performs best. Carousels can do well. So that's like where you upload a document and it's like a slideshow. They can work well if you're giving kind of a breakdown, like a how to do something or a 5-step process to something, or you're breaking down like how you got an end result. That's quite a good way of showcasing that information without sharing a very long text-based post, right? It's digestible content. That's what we love, especially on mobile. So that works for that. For personal storytelling content, text-based post with an image works the best. But equally, you can go viral with any format. Any format can go viral. It just so happens that certain ones seem to perform better. Video is an interesting one because I think over time, LinkedIn will begin to favor video more and more. And the little features that they're releasing at the moment and beta testing kind of suggests that. But at the moment, the reach on video isn't amazing on LinkedIn, but it's definitely something I would recommend because not a lot of people are doing it. And that alone is your differentiator. It's a really strong way of nurturing an audience and building that deeper connection.
They did try stories for a while, didn't they, LinkedIn?
They did.
And then just got rid of it. I don't think people were using it. I don't think people knew how to use it. It used to come up as little circles on the top. I think that was a big miss for them. It wasn't a hit. Because I think, as you said, most of the content I see is image or text-based on LinkedIn, and especially in the feed that comes through. So if you're a small business or a freelancer out there, which tends to be most of our audience who tends to listen, it's individuals, people that work in-house for companies, sometimes it's directors or smaller companies, ideally, who tend to listen to this podcast. How do they compete with the larger profiles and brands? So you said earlier in the podcast, you can have 100 followers and go viral. The goal isn't to become viral. The goal is to create, a brand, a personal brand that can be aligned to your company. But how do, Joe Blogs, who's a builder, compete with the biggest construction firm out there in terms of whose experience might be just as well or worthwhile? And how does he get out to a specific audience?
I think 2 things. Firstly, do something different that nobody else is doing. And second, do it consistently enough. Repetition is so important in this game. And it's fine to repeat your messaging, your key messaging, until it's known by a mass audience. So we took on a client who works in supply chain, which is traditionally quite a corporate industry. And we went really ham on the personal storytelling for that client. And through that alone, we were sharing posts about, for example, that client not having a degree, but interviewing the global head of Nike on their podcast, right? And that alone was like groundbreaking for their audience to talk about, to not have a degree and be on a such kind of high global level in the industry. That post went viral, inspired loads of conversation, skyrocketed following. So I always say do something different for your audience that other people aren't doing. And one great way to do that is by being personal, because still a lot of people still think, LinkedIn's not the place for that. So they don't be personal and they don't share their story. I say you are your differentiator, you're not your company. You're the person who makes an impact on the industry. And yeah, doing it consistently, day in, day out.
So when you go viral and you got the global head of Nike, how do you follow it up? You go get the global head of Adidas or something. Is that how it works? But consistency is key, yeah.
100% consistency. And also I think looking at the data, LinkedIn isn't just a creating content kind of thing, just putting it out there into the universe, because every post you put out there leaves an image in somebody's brain about you. So it's quite easy for me to write a piece of content and share it and think that's done. But the impact that post could have and how I'm perceived could last years. So look at your data, see what's working, look at your top performing hooks, look at the themes that resonate with your audience. What's the engagement rate? When are you posting? Collect that data. There's loads of platforms you can, softwares you can use to analyze and congregate that data.
Do you recommend any platforms?
There's two main ones. Shield, which is a good one.
Shield,
Shield.ai. And then there's also Taplio, which is another one. And they both do a similar thing. They just provide really in-depth analytics. So you can really see your top performing LinkedIn content over time, the best posting times, what hooks are working, what keywords are resonate with your audience. Like any marketing, you'll know this. Use your data, learn from it, tweak, make iterations, optimize.
So are there any, you talked about, personalizing it. Are there any examples of people that you follow or accounts that you work on that you would give as the best example of people that do something different and, have their own kind of personal touch to what they do on LinkedIn? Are there any example profiles that someone should listen to or follow?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads. So Leah Turner is a great example, kind of almost like the blueprint of building a brand. Went from minimum wage worker to having a business that turns over multi-seven figures, and it's just her and a VA. So that's the blueprint. There's also other accounts. Sophie Miller is a great example. Fiona Bradley is a great example. Ashley Holmes and Mitch Clayton, two co-founders who have just completely transformed their business through LinkedIn directly. Great examples there. Ellie Middleton as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's loads. I could go on.
I mean, the one that I like a lot is James Clutterbuck, who's from Berkeley Red F1. And because people don't get his sarcasm or his jokes. And it's just funny. He does everything. When you said that, the first person that came to mind was like, who do I see always on LinkedIn that's always personal, doesn't give a, about anyone else. Yeah. Sorry, Callum, I know you're going to have to edit that word out. It doesn't give a care about what anyone else says. And he plays to it. So when people do comments and say, you look like Woody from Toy Story or elements like that, he'll then create a video of him smoking and whilst being on the toilet and reading it and just laughing at it. And it's just hilarious. He plays to it. It's not true. Yeah. But it still riles some people up that he gets engagement. But most of his engagement posts just come from people saying, that's hilarious. This is your funniest post yet. But he's bringing his sense of stupid comedy to it. And I'm assuming it's working for him because, I follow him. I'm an ambassador. I've bought some tickets on F1 from him as well directly. And I've built a great relationship with him and his team. But he isn't what he is on his LinkedIn in real life. He's just playing to devil's advocate, essentially. That's
the differentiator, I would say. Humor is a great way to stand out. Your tone of voice on LinkedIn differentiates you just as much as the stories you tell, the images you share, the things you write and how you write as well. So, we've built brands for people based on sarcasm, just like very sarcastic accounts talking about very serious issues, but saying it in a sarcastic way that makes people actually listen and take notice. Because nobody wants to read another post about employee turnover is going to hit record high. These are all the problems with your culture. Yeah. But when you put a funny kind of slant on that, people are suddenly interested and listening. Yeah. So your tone of voice makes a huge difference, whether you're really empowering and inspiring, whether you're going to be quite sarcastic and humorous in your content. Think about that as well, because that has an impact on your engagement as well. Yeah.
Right. Final question I always ask every guest is, what's the one takeaway you want the audience to leave with?
I would say LinkedIn is a great opportunity right now I probably shouldn't say this, I have a LinkedIn personal branding agency. My livelihood depends on this algorithm. But the algorithm is not going to get better, it's only going to decline. Like any other social media platform, over time, they'll start monetizing certain features. Another platform will come along. So if you want to scale an audience, monetize it, and generate business from it, now is the time to get on LinkedIn and start building your brand. I'm the perfect example of that. I graduated with a geography degree, and then within 6 months, I had an audience big enough and engaged enough to start a business. And within 3-4 weeks, I had 7 clients signed, all inbound. To this day, I've never sent a cold email or even a cold DM to anybody or done any paid marketing ever. And it's purely through my own personal brand. So if I can do that without any marketing kind of degree or education, I genuinely think there's people out there with like 10 years worth of experience in their industry and a heap of contacts. Like, this is such a great opportunity. Don't let it pass you by.
Yeah, based on what you just said then, I think my BD should be worried in terms of how we do our business development. No, I totally agree with you. I think it's consistency, create that personalization, and, if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but just keep going and look at the data and insights. So I want to thank you for joining us. Thanks for being on the Bobble Pod. That wraps up this podcast. You said you have your own podcast as well.
Yes.
What's the name of the podcast?
Yes, Rebels by Shoaib Ahmed. Yeah. If you kind of go on my LinkedIn, you'll be able to see all the details there.
Right. We'll get a link. We'll add that to our YouTube link, and we'll add that to our social post so you can listen to his podcast as well. Thank you for joining us. Again, to anyone who's watching and listening, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. You can get into contact us using @Bobble Digital across all social platforms. Use the hashtag Mr. Bobble, Ask Bobble, or hashtag Bobble Pod for any questions or queries you have. And we look forward to catching up with you on the next episode. Thank you very much.
Thank you.